Thank you all for joining us for Munch Learn today, 2nd of 2021, and very excited to hear from Hayden in a minute. I understand he's been prepping well. So as usual, we'll go around very quickly so people know who people on the call are. Feel free to jump in at any point and ask questions, interrupt Hayden if you want, and we'll have a discussion at the end based on what he said. So I'll go first. I'm Liam Henderson, Chair of the Rail Innovation Group. Wayne.
Hi, Wayne Marks Butler, CCD, Design and Ergonomics Consultancy, driving the passenger experience in the railway industry.
Cool. Ray.
Ray Chapman of Ray Chapman Associates, a transport consultancy.
We've got Paul Bigland.
Hi, yeah, I'm Paul Bigland. I'm a rail journalist and photographer who works across the rail industry.
Cool. We've got Stephen Hartley.
Yeah, that's me, Stephen Hartley. I'm a solution architect at Rail Delivery Group, currently working on various projects to expose more data via APIs and all sorts of good modern technologies like that.
Phil Facey.
Phil Facey from Deepen and Blue. So we do software testing in the rail industry, and I'm moving on to do other things from next week. So Mark Megson will be joining from future innovation groups.
Great, thank you. Keith Kelly.
Hi, Keith Kelly from Enterprise Car Club. I coordinate, amongst other things, the location of car club vehicles at railway stations, for example, on the LNER network, to encourage people to take the train, but then use the car for the first or last mile of their journey.
Cool. Thank you for joining us. We have Ian Rush.
Hello, yeah, Ian Rush, Data and Process Advantage. We're data management consultants, currently doing some work with Crossrail and HS1 and other clients, non-railway related. Apologies, I have to disappear halfway through this because I've got another call to get onto.
Don't worry, cool, thanks. Zach.
Hi there, so Zach from Travel AI, and we help understand how people use transport systems using our smartphone software.
Thanks. Liam Crozier.
Hi, I'm Liam. I'm a PhD student. I also do a lot of work with rail data, with maps, the charts, and other visualizations.
Thank you. We've got Jordan D.
Hi, Jordan DeTrapani, Public Transport Analyst at Transport for London.
Thank you. Craig O'Brien.
Yeah, good afternoon all. Craig O'Brien, the Engineering and Technical Manager for UK Tram, interested observer involved in a couple of innovation projects in the light rail industry, so I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Great. Greg Johnson.
Good afternoon, everyone. Gregor Johnson from Resalco Solutions. I'm a technical project manager and independent consultant. I work a lot with Hayden on the open transport as well, so that's kind of where I come into it.
Sorry about that. We got Peter Hicks.
Director at Open Train Times, working across the rail industry on data and open data projects.
Thank you. Next up, we got Eric. Oh, Eric's still connected. Then we have someone called DSCHOEN.
That's me, Dan Schoenhofen. I'm with the Belly of ScotRail at the moment. I'm working with Hayden and Gregor on the open transport.
Oh, great. Boston.
Hi everyone, Boston here, KTP Associate at Rasic Limited.
Thank you. Oh, Deb, hi.
Hang on, let's put my video on. Sorry, I was just getting my coffee. Did you try and introduce me and I wasn't here?
No.
Oh, good. Hello, I'm Deb and I'm from the Rail Innovation Group and also from the High Speed Rail Group.
Thanks for joining us.
Right.
Eric Hewitson.
Hello.
Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, yes, I'm Eric. I'm from Wild Networks.
Thanks.
Yep.
Cool. Ben Jones.
Hi, my name's Ben Jones. I'm Business Development Manager for SMB UK and Ireland.
Thank you. We've got Joe Heapy.
Hi there, I'm Joe. I'm a managing partner at Engine. We are a service design consultancy working with all sorts of organizations on their development of customer/passenger experience. We've worked with a number of rail companies, RDG, and some of the UK strategic rail projects.
Great, thank you. We have, just going to Archie.
Hi everyone, I'm a data and innovation policy advisor at DFT Rail Group. I'm particularly interested in open data and APIs, so interested to see what you guys have to hear.
Thank you very much. And Daniel Tabassum.
Good afternoon. Daniel Tabassum, electrical electronic engineering graduate at Network Rail.
Cool. Thank you very much for joining us. If anyone else comes, I'll admit them and they'll appear on the screen. No announcements from me really this week. So unless Deb has any updates she would like to give on the exciting cargo bike project she's working on, just put her on the spot there. If you have anything you'd like to tell us to update us, do so. Otherwise, you got anything you want to say about that?
Just to say that we are progressing it, although still looking for funding opportunities for this project. So if anyone's got any good ideas about that, please do let us know. But we've got a meeting with Network Rail next week to start to sort of put a bit more meat on the bones with that project. But yeah, it's working, it's happening. We're just slowly moving it.
Debs, have you chat to Ray about that? Ray, you were talking about that on the Mass Scotland cargo bike stuff. Suggest you to join
Ray,
up.
which Ray? Ray Chapman. We are. Yeah, Ray's involved in the working group. So yes, thank you. We are. We're on it on that.
Cool. For anyone who's unfamiliar, this is a sort of a separate workshop we're doing on trying to integrate the passenger rail network with the small freight parcel distribution. So where we can bring things in on trains and then onto cargo bikes into cities. So Deb is leading that for us. If you're interested, let me know afterwards and we can get you involved. There's a working group and meetings. So without further ado, Hayden, I'm going to hand over to you because I know you're very excited to do this. And yes, keep your questions coming.
Right, I'm going to, oops, there we go. Hang on a second, I'll just stop sharing and I'll just bring up the whole of my screen. Here we go. Right, let's see. Can you all see my big presentation?
Yeah.
Yep.
Fantastic. Okay. Firstly, who am I? For those who don't know, my name's Hayden Sutherland and I am the founder and chair of the Open Transport Initiative. I will explain more about that as well. If you also see me on LinkedIn, you also see I'm a director of Ideal Interface, which is a digital strategy, technology and marketing consultancy. I think we're like Google partners and that sort of stuff. But I'm not here to talk about my consultancy, I'm talking about the other love of my life. First, let's just set the scenes. The transport industry goes out of its way to make, in my opinion, data difficult. For example, the traveling customer has to work really, really hard these days to access their transport and mobility data that's stored all over the place. There are literally dozens and dozens of different online accounts now. We know that there's one for every major transport provider, a mass platform that are out there. In fact, some of the mass platforms have multiple accounts within them, and that is a huge problem. You know, you've got 26 TOCs, of which I think there's 24 different online accounts across the UK. That's just in the rail industry. And therefore customers have to log in to every single account if they want to see their purchases, the tickets they purchased, and in some cases the usage they've got. There is no one place they can go, which is kind of sad really if you think about it in a way. Well, why isn't there a way for the customer to view all their data in all these disparate accounts all in the same way? Why isn't there, for example, an online service that could present tickets, permits, passes, usage across all these different transport modes, not just rail, perhaps in a single dashboard? you know, without them all having to be part of one super duper or Uber platform. You know, why isn't there such a service? And why aren't there, you know, innovations? You know, people in this group saying, well, I'm joining up customers' journey data and customers' ticket data, you know, and using that data from all the different accounts to help the customer plan faster, cheaper, greener future transport decisions. Oh, by the way, I have a 9-year-old who's homeschooling at the moment downstairs. So if he pops up and suddenly joins this conversation, his name's Huey, but if he comes in, okay. In short though, and this is actually a quote from the UK government, the biggest inhibitor to transport, what they call smart data integration, isn't technology anymore. It's the lack of an adoptive framework to securely access, use, and share that data across multiple different transport providers. You heard me just mention about open, or what you mentioned, open and smart data, but it's probably worth giving you a couple of definitions. The open data, and within transport, that's usually meant data that's available to all and free for any purpose. So it's shared data that comes out from sources and that it's just published, you know, public transport timetables, mass transport vehicle location data, you know, the Darwins of this world and those sorts of feeds, they are public open data sources. You know, the BODS that comes, that's been announced, that's been legislated recently, the Bus Open Data Service, for example, these are all open data. So as well as open data, there's also smart data. Sometimes the UK, well, the government calls this smart data, sometimes called shared data. This is data that's owned by a customer and shared with their permission. It's data that should be portable and interoperable. You'll hear me use that word quite a lot, between multiple services. Where's smart data used in other industries? Well, the most obvious example is open banking. For those who haven't used open banking, they'll understand that open banking basically gives customers the rights and ability to share their financial data with third parties, including other financial services people and organizations. This was significantly pushed forward just 3 years ago. It was actually just in 3 years, the legislation done by what's called the PSD2, the Payment Service Directives, which was what basically pushed open banking across Europe. And the UK government in the CMA, the Competition and Markets Authority, actually legislated that the major banks and the UK banks must create API standards that allowed third parties to access this smart customer data in a consistent way. So that was 3 years ago that basically the CMA said, adopted open banking and legislated for it. Other industries, well, open finance is really the extension of open banking. That's now in progress, and that's a bit coming across the whole of the financial services. So you'll have insurance, all sorts of things, you know, telemetrics and car data, that'll be interoperable, will help fuel that wider financial industry. There's open energy, that's now started up, so you can exchange, imagine exchanging, you know, contract details. Imagine being able to share your data from British Gas with SSE or whatever it is, your other electricity gas provider. Should make billing, switching, everything much easier in that market as well. So what is this to do with transport? You're going, okay, and what are you telling us about banking and energy? Well, there's a report produced on the 9th of September, just 3 months ago, from the UK government. This was called Next Steps for Smart Data, putting customers and SMEs in control of their data and enabling innovation. That was their title, not mine. But in this document, though, there were some pretty important things that affected the whole of the UK economy. And it stated the intention of the UK government was to mandate industry involvement in these initiatives beyond open banking, beyond finance, across the whole of the UK economy. And it stated clearly that the Parliament will make different sectors participate in this smart data of open banking, but across other market sectors. And it specifically mentioned transport. It actually specifically gave various use cases and mentioned them. So what is the Open Transport Initiative? Well, we were set up really to further the creation and adoption of open standards and smart data sharing standards in transport and mobility. Throughout 2019, various people came together There were various different workshops, various different meetings. I think I locked some people in rooms at certain points and threatened not to let them out. I did what they call the Apollo 13, which is threatened to suck the air out until they came to a decision. I also bribed them with burgers, beers, and did the odd Jedi mind trick on them to try and get them what we wanted to do. But there were numerous different people from the rail, ferry, bus, car hire, car parking industries throughout 2019 contributed to this standard, meaning that in early 2020, we are just over a year old, we published the first standards, the first and only open standard API specifications for transport and mobility customer account sharing. In other words, we have become known as really the standard that enables open banking for transport. So the current state we've got really does encourage the current sort of way we've got things set up in the transport industry. Just imagine this sort of, you've got the customer here and they log into every single account they've got. Every single mass platform's got its account. Every single transport provider's got its own account. And the customer, if it wants to see, and I'm not talking about ticketing, I'm talking about customer purchases and transactions and sometimes journey data, all have to log into every single different account if they want to get all that data. What we are proposing is that the customer can join up the data from multiple different accounts in the same way that open banking does, so that data can be shared and consolidated in the account of their choice. This doesn't mean that we are stopping transport providers and mass platforms engaging with their own transport, their own customers and having their own relationship, but it's a way of the customer being in control of their data and sharing it in the way that they want. In other words, there you go, a common interoperable account open standard now makes consistent sharing of transport mobility data possible. Thank you, Hayden, I couldn't have put it better myself. So what do you mean by an open standard? Well, our standards that we've launched are entirely open. They are free to adopt. There are no costs, conditions, and caveats. They are there to be adopted and used. We are, though, talking to people about the exact way we produce a license in the future for free use, because even though we've said they are free to adopt, people have said, yes, but what's the license? So don't understand it's free, but we have given away all our intellectual property. In other words, we've given this to the industry to create an opportunity to enable basically innovation. Think of it in the same way that HTML standard for web pages was given away as a free standard, and it enabled a whole ecosystem, a whole industry of different people to create web pages as they want and basically created the World Wide Web. That's the power of open standards in helping fuel innovation. And these standards are published up on the API directory with Swagger Hub and Programmable Web, where they're documented in there. Who's adopted this? Well, early adopters that we have signed up or that are using this now. So those who don't know Modal, who are won the recent first phase, of one of the people to successfully win the Innovate and Geospatial Commission project to integrate their location data with the mass account data. They explicitly specified that they are going to use that, the data sharing from the customer account data using the Open Transport API standard. So really that's the first sort of when the rubber hits the ground, I think the terminology, the first being able to use in the open space. But also we're lucky enough that two University of Glasgow IT student groups now are building reference implementations of this. They've actually got their studies are focused around implementing these APIs in earnest and publicizing those. Also, though, we have received statements of intent, both from a major European transport operating group with several UK franchises in transport and Travel AI. Zach, who's on the call, thank you. Your carbon traveling calculation app, you've pledged that you're going to implement those APIs. Thank you very much. So what am I here to talk to you about? Well, I'm here to ask you to do things, to get involved in what we're doing. I'm asking you to consider the phrase a next requirement. The account must be basically, how can your accounts that you've got support shareable, interoperable data? So if you've got a software system that has a customer account that contains transport data, and I'm talking about tickets, agreements, passes, journeys, usage concession data, then we want you to be part of our initiative and part of commit to using this. And therefore need you to take a look at the standards that we've produced. Do they meet your needs? Tell us, have a look at these API standards if they do meet your needs. If they don't, tell us. This is an open standard, and as long as the standards are backwardly compatible, we've released in May, we published a version 1.1 of our standard to make some things a lot more compatible with other open standards out there. But we are considering future changes to our work, and consider how you can adopt or implement these. I'm not asking them to be done tomorrow, but in the fullness of time. So add open transport APIs as an interoperable standard to your product backlog to talk to others, other systems. Make these APIs potentially part of your next system procurement. So if you're actually going out to procure a new system that has a customer account, add the fact that your customer account must enable the secure sharing of customer data with other customer accounts via a common and open standard API. Add that in as a non-functional requirement. That's all we're asking. Or if you're part of or include, you're in, I don't know, you're running an innovation challenge, why not suggest and offer to say that you can use our standards that we produce as the way to fuel that innovation. I think it's people saying, well, why should we do it now? Well, it's time to basically shape what we're doing or be shaped by this industry. There is a chance now to work to adopt smart data sharing practices and standards now. Basically, it's not just all about us, it's about helping the customers be in control of their data. In the same way open banking now has like millions and millions of adopters and is enabled a huge ecosystem of innovation. We want the customer to be empowered by that, and we want to power innovation across our industry, not just rail, bus, ferry, tram, Segway, bike hire, car hire, you name it, enable them all to be interoperable. And you know, we're already talking, we're talking quite a lot with the whole open community on this, you know, sharing data, sharing smart data across multiple industries, including the open banking community who we're working alongside. And I suggest that we do this now, before we're all legislated and mandated to do so, before government legislation forces us to do it. There is a first mover advantage here. There is lots more information that I can publish online. Suggest you go to opentransport.co.uk. There's lots and lots of information up there, and there's links to our specifications, or just come back and talk to me about that. Now, I've spoken for 20 or 25 minutes, probably, hopefully fueled some thoughts and some questions that you've got. So I think I'd like to open the floor up, unless there's, firstly, have I stated anything that sort of people want me to clarify, or any questions around clarification of what I've just put forward?
I have a question, it's not a clarification.
Sure.
Whilst other people think of their questions, is from your research into other industries that have already gone through this process, what are the sort of the unintended wins, or what results has it had?
So if you take, that's a very good question. If you take open banking has the major financial services, the major banks implementing open banking and forcing them to work amongst themselves. So if you've got a Barclays account and HSBC account, you can go into your Barclays account and see your Barclays transactions and your financial transactions and your HSBC ones in your Barclays account, and vice versa. The added consequence is that there's been hundreds and hundreds of third-party providers who now provide add-on services and value-added services into the financial services industry. So there are now there's things like Money Dashboard, which now goes off to all the different banking APIs, pulls them all in, and then it can see, for example, that you know, Hayden spent £100 in January on wine and £100 in February on wine in different bank accounts. Well, you know, my annual £200 was spent on 2 different bank accounts, and it pulls into those. So it can say I've spent the grocery shopping on 2, and you know, it's pulled that in, so it helps me financial plan better. There have been huge people have brought in sort of machine learning algorithms into financial services, all sorts of additional third-party services. It's just the fintech economy has been powered and fueled by open banking. Without it, we would not have had open bank, hardly had a lot of the fintech stuff. I'm not saying all of it, because that's the consumer side, but huge amounts of the B2C fintech has been enabled by open banking. What I'm suggesting is that the UK government has said they are going to legislate to introduce that within our industry. We have created a standard to do that already. I am talking with, as you can imagine, the UK government and the different policymakers, and I'm really grateful and happy that they said that they're going to mandate this legislation in September. So the writing is on the wall for our industry. If we want to fuel our industry, we should be looking about optionally adopting these standards now before we're forced to.
Great, thank you. Anyone have any questions?
Yes, I have a question. Thank you, Hayden, for your presentation. I think my question is quite similar to Liam's question as well. What sort of data can be shared via this API specification?
Oh, and that's a really good question. If I can drive back again, I've got an additional slides that I kept in my slide graveyard. So look at it. Hang on a second. Can you see that one? Oh, I can see Ray's on his bike now with his mask on.
What's cycling so fast?
The Ninja Warrior. Look at him. Hang on a second. Let me just see. Okay, so if you can see this, we've actually got 2 different APIs that we've released. The first one is an account sharing API. This is the one that's the open banking API standard. And this enables transport data, not customer personally identifiable data. So it's not your address. It's not anything about you. It's not your telephone number. It's not anything else that you've got in your transport account. It is specific transport data, and I'll come to that in a minute. Actually, I'll explain that now. The 3 key data entities, I think I've got a youngster around. 3 key data entities that we are sharing are: 1, purchase data. In other words, your transport ticket, your rail ticket, your pass to travel, your account-based ticketing account contract. That is that is your purchase entity. Second is your usage. So that could be your A to B journeys that are stored as part of a mass platform from A to B, or your postcode to postcode. It could also be your car parking duration from A to A, your car parking duration. But we've also got within the standard the ability to share things that are used as additional services. For example, one of the people that contributed to our standard was an airline consultancy, and they talked about the fact that when people used to travel by airline, one of the revenue things and the usage was telephone calls in first class. So they charged for those. So people wanted to see that data. So it's usage. Mainly think of it in the rail and the transport industry, though, as bus and rail A to B journeys. But also the third entity we wanted to really expose consistently was concessions. And that can be a rail card, you've got a Club 50 discount card, but it could also be a staff discount scheme, 20% off to travel within the city centre, or Iron Brew Bank Holiday Monday to travel for free around Glasgow, or that sort of thing. So it's not personally identifiable information, Bosun. It's that journey which is consistent across every different mode of transport. And if I can just cover that as well, the second thing is the API that we've got is we realized that when we were creating a standard for basically for accounts, exposing account data in a consistent way, transport account data. If you take a leaf out the banking book, the banking sort of community, they've got two things that define an account. The first one is the account number. The second one is the sort code. The sort code is your directory location of your account. And if we look, there is no such thing as a directory of all APIs across industries from, so if I said, oh, I'm going to publish an API for my customer account, it's not a Field of Dreams like Kevin Costner says. If you build it, they don't just come. For those who are old enough to remember that film, you actually have to create a directory to be able to find these APIs as well. So as well as publishing the standard for our front door to access data, we created the standard for the post office as well. So in effect, we created the first transport and mobility directory service. That's an API as well. And as part of that, we had to define modes of transport across the entire transport and mobility sector. So we've got two different APIs. The first one services purchase, usage, and concessions. The second API exposes just more APIs of a directory service within the industry. Does that answer your question, Bosun?
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much, Hayden.
Thank you. That's a good question. Thank you very much.
Anyone else want to jump in?
Hi, it's Joe here from Engine Service Design. Thank you, Hayden. There's a big dose of common sense in the center of all of this. Thank you for that. I have a couple of questions. Maybe you can help me understand and illustrate. It's clear there are clear benefits for the traveling passenger here in terms of simplifying the overall experience. What are the commercial benefits for example, the individual TOC?
Yeah. All right, this has been a great topic amongst the board, because the commercial benefit for a TOC, it's not much commercial benefit for a TOC. They're just like the banks for open banking before it came out. There is the ability though, if you think about it, for every transport provider to have this API to expose data in a consistent way for value-added services. So say, for example, you were a TOC that was doing an account-based transport scheme, but you wanted to use a third-party, I don't know, journey location service, that calculates carbon or calculates your journey at the same time. You wouldn't actually have to build that. You could integrate that journey data and pull that data into your account. So what we're saying is that although there's no commercial, there's definitely a customer empowerment, customer implementation, sort of customer benefit. The other thing is, by creating consistent APIs that can be used across the industry, it's that worm, write once, reuse many times. Once you've implemented it and integrated one via the consistent API, you can integrate, as long as everybody keeps using the same API standards, you can save on your software development costs, your integration costs. You don't have to spend weeks with a business analyst and a technical architect going through defining yet another API specification to integrate some data. There is already an API data specification for integration there and published. So I would say the commercial benefit is an actual financial commercial benefit. It's kind of like, what's the benefit of street lamps? What's the benefit of the sewage system? What's the benefit of electricity? Unfortunately, it's a utility and it's an enabling technology that we're talking about here, as opposed to you can get more money from it. But the cost savings from a system reuse. Also, it's worth mentioning that, okay, some of you work for technology providers in the rail industry. Some of you are procurers of technical solutions within the rail and transport industry. Some of the aim of some vendors, potentially not on here, to lock in their customers by technology, via proprietary standards, via proprietary point-to-point integration technologies. And yes, those vendors who try to lock in transport providers, transport authorities, smart cities, all those sorts of things, their aim is to try and retain them, and lock them into their technology practice. That's good commercial sense, but it doesn't make sense for the authority, the transport provider. It doesn't make sense for those people who want to, I don't know, have an add-on solution and not be locked into the roadmap of their huge provider, their software vendor, who will probably charge them an arm and a leg in 6 months for doing something that should be really done by a startup, such as the people on this group, really quickly and really easily. So it's less commercial benefit. It's the fuel of innovation. It's the customer benefit. It's the don't reinvent the wheel every single sodding time. Use this standard and break yourself away from that lock-in as well. I'm sure everybody can say there's numerous other ways, but so yes, there will be those in the transport and the mobility as a service ecosystem or providing vendors who do not want to embrace this standard. In fact, I have had one organization who isn't on this call tell me they're actually going to work towards it not being adopted because they want to lock in their customers. It's in their interest to lock them in. So that's where I would say the commercial organizations and the legislators will come butt heads. There's nothing I can do about that, but I'm on the side of suggesting legislation is needed sometimes to enable to use this as an enabling layer to help fuel, well, this community as well. Every single transport mobility community, we can provide this to help them out. Joe, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I can see that, and there are huge opportunities around cost saving. And if as an industry, an individual talks, you can reduce the number of complaints, for example, the number of errors, customer errors that end up having a cost implication for them. That would be great. The other part of my question, if I can, is some scenarios for traveling passengers, and it's interesting around this challenge of personally identifiable data, but. Say, for example, I'm a passenger with a disability, and it's really important that I know that I can travel on a service with a working toilet, for example. In other industries, there's a strong mantra around the tell us once. In fact, the government have invested a lot in tell us once. Can I tell the network something about me once? And allow that to shape the ticket choices or service choices I'm presented with, for example.
So I would hazard to say that that information about you is personal. It's not so much personally identifiable. It's linked to your customer account, and it's not shareable via our standard. The only thing that may be that it could be shareable is if you've got a ticket that is a permit that is a concession, that is a disabled concession. We can share that. So you wouldn't necessarily say, I have this disability or I need this, but what you say is I have the entitlement to do this, and this. So it would be up to the train operating company or the bus company to prove or disprove that entitlement is possible. But then once that entitlement was given, you could share that entitlement. In other words, I'm entitled to a wheelchair space. I'm entitled to travel for free. I'm entitled to do that. So we can make the concession shareable. It's not up to our standard to prove or disprove or send personally identifiable information about I have this disability. It's I have this ability to prove it. I have this. Yeah, I have a concession or something like that. So it is possible to share some information about the customer and their ability to do something. It's not possible to share information about the customer. Does that make sense?
Yes, yeah. It's in that kind of weird space, isn't it? When does this information become personally identifiable? In which case, I guess as an additional data challenge.
Yes, yeah, so take the example that if you've got ability to travel, or you've got the ability to be a carer for transport, for a carer for a disabled person. You might want that concession in your account, and you might want to share that ability. That doesn't personally identify you as having the disability. It gives you an entitlement to that disability ticket or ability to travel, that ability to purchase tickets on behalf. It's that concession and enablement to be able to do that we're sharing. Otherwise, we get into dodgy ground about, well, can I share preferences? Can I share this? Can I share my postcode of where I live? We're not after sharing any form of PII in this. We're then into a
crazy world.
Crazy, well, into there'd be dragons, let's just say, and I'm sure others, and there are people who are far more into the security and the lockdown, the GDPR ramifications of sharing personally identifiable, or one might say customer account information, rather than transport specific data. There are also other standards for sharing other things like that.
Great, thank you very much.
Thanks, Joe. That's good.
Stephen Hartley, I notice you're nodding a lot as Hayden's talking. So, as someone from the rail industry, this isn't the first time you've heard this, I'm assuming. So, I was wondering if there's any insight from your side.
Well, first of all, I completely agree with everything I've heard. I can't tell you how excited I am to hear it. It is completely relevant, and yeah, just love it. So, to give you a little bit of background on what's going on in RDG at the moment, we are putting together basically an integration platform which will, effectively open up this data in much the same way as you're talking about. I'm going to be writing an API specification this afternoon, so I'm very keen to get hold of the open transport thing to make sure I incorporate it into our design. I can't tell you. So at the moment, I'm working on a project to expose reservation information across APIs, but this reservations project is kind of the very first step. It's a proof we can get something out there working in this kind of API microservices way. But once we've done that, we've kind of demonstrated we can do it. It's like the world is your oyster, literally. There's so much stuff out there that we have access to through the rail industry, the TOCs, Network Rail, goodness knows who. All we need to do is build a window to the world to consume this stuff. And somebody mentioned earlier about what the potential benefits of this stuff might be. Well, part of the beauty and the excitement for me is that when we put this stuff out there, people far, far, far cleverer than I'll ever be will look at this data and find some kind of use for it that we could never dream of in a million years. And goodness knows where that might even end up. So I think it's, I'm trying not to big this up too much, but I think it's kind of, almost hard to overstate what the benefits of this could be. I'm really excited and very appreciative of the work you've done. And I'm also fascinated to know who's not on board with this, because most kind of innovative companies that I've met really are. I've got a kind of inkling, and those that know me from previous encounters might know who I think it might be, but I'm genuinely interested to know who that person might be and whether we envisage him or her as a consumer perhaps of our APIs in the future. But yeah, amazing, great work, thank you.
Stephen, thank you very much for those encouraging words. I'm obviously aware of the potential of data marketplaces and that sort of stuff. So we're talking with other people and your colleagues. I'm also aware that your platform, the actual, well, put it this way, the API architect who's part of our team who put it together is a qualified MuleSoft architect. So have some of your pain there, sir. The work, I mean, yeah, we are more than happy to share what we've done. We don't want to duplicate anything that anybody else has done. So we've been talking with the Dutch, we've been talking with a whole of the European community, we've been talking with the Open Mobility Foundation on the MDS and how we cross over with those. We have been trying to share what we've been doing. And I tell you what, people like BSI, British Standards Institute, have been really helpful in supporting us and even pointed us in the direction. For example, our central directory lookup service, they told us and said to us when we published that first version in January last year, they went, oh, it's good, but it's not great. I said, why is that? I said, well, you don't conform to the Internet of Things standards and you might want to make other things standards. So I said, well, what's that? So they pointed us in the direction of a standard, and we have made out now, we changed we've migrated our standard, we updated it to now accommodate the Internet of Things lookup directory standard to make it an API lookup thing of things. And it now is a child reference implementation of that wider global standard on internet lookup. So you're right, we don't often want to duplicate anything. But if there's anybody on here that is looking to make, I don't know, their car sharing service account data interoperable, or they want to be part of a mass ecosystem in the future, and they can, there is a standard here. It's also worth mentioning that a huge thanks to people like Dan and Gregor, who are on this call, who are part of my my standards board, who are part of my board. Everybody that has contributed to this standard over the course of 2019 and 2020 has done of their own volition. We are unfunded completely, no money. It's all been out. People have given up their consulting time. API consultants have given up their time and effort to do all this and contribute. But the huge altruistic impact this has on the whole of the transport mobility ecosystem. So I just want to say thanks to Dan, thanks to Gregor and people and other people that are around about who've contributed, who have said, my challenge is to anybody, Stephen, if it doesn't exactly meet your needs, tell us. I don't want you to reinvent the wheel, but if you say, well, Hayden, it doesn't include exactly that. We've had that when we've been working remotely with the geospatial. They've said, oh, it doesn't exactly include the 3-letter acronym that comes through from the code from a ticket type. So we're going to do a backward compatible change potentially to include that with the restrictions, H1, G2, whatever it is, restriction on tickets as well, just to make sure that that can be passed through at the same time. So, sorry, I'm wittering on about data standards and rail interoperability, but it's these sorts of things, if it doesn't exactly meet your needs, if it doesn't meet the solar powered scooter sharing in Glasgow need, then we want to know. So please, we'd like to, and I can't tell you who it is because I've got who was going to work against me because I've got a personal crusade to make them to make them suffer for it. Actually, I'll see them in court.
We do have a hand up from Keith Kelly.
Yeah, thanks, Liam, and thanks very much for the presentation. Really useful. And as a shared mobility provider through Car Club and traditional rental services, very much support the whole direction of travel, and I'll share that information with my colleagues working on mobility as a service. I suppose the point I wanted to make is the importance, particularly for this audience, of making sure that all of this innovation in data standards and innovation in mobility as a service is actually followed through in the sector. So the example I'm going to give you is we have a great partnership with LNER, and I've just done some data crunching this morning about our Car Club vehicle at Berwick Station, Berwick upon Tweed. And 70% of the people using that vehicle do not have a TD postcode. In other words, they don't live in Berwick, they live in Edinburgh, they live in Yorkshire, they live in Manchester, they live in London.
Yeah.
And even when I present that data to TOCs and say, look, putting a car at your train station enables people to travel by train. It might seem counterintuitive, but that's the fact. But I could have to take my shoes and socks off to tell you the number of times that I have conversations about Car Club with TOCs, and I end up having a conversation with the gentleman who is paid in terms of revenue from car parks, and then they end up with a financial settlement for us, which is just completely unsustainable because they want $4.5 grand for a parking station at Ilkley or something like that. Yep. And so your advice and assistance so that we can play our active role in the rail network so that we can be judged on the value that we bring in terms of encouraging rail travel rather than just being viewed as somebody who takes parking away at stations. Does that make sense?
Yeah, Keith,
any advice you can give me on how to do that would be appreciative from Stephen at RDG, from anyone on the call.
So Stephen, there's thank you very much. Sorry, Keith, thank you very much. Two things of response. Firstly, I want to talk to people at Enterprise, your system architects, your solution architects, to understand what if you will put, because I'm after people pledging that they will commit to implement the Open Transport API standards in the future. So I'm after some form of, we will do that in the future, even if it's you're going to add it to your backlog for 2023 when you brief your new system in. I don't care. There is a Chinese phrase, which is the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The next best time is now. If we don't do it now, we'll be 20 years time going, damn, Hayden, we should have done that. Okay, but so that's the first one. The second thing is we see the value of joining up customer data. If you can see in your account, you can see your Enterprise Car Club car sharing mileage and your usage with your chain ticket, and you can in one account view your end-to-end customer journey. That empowers the customer. It also may make it shareable with the TOC and at a higher level. If you can view a dashboard or anonymized of of all shared data, and you can help transport planning phenomenally. You know, first mile. I mean, talks are always after first and last mile. You know, they're no longer after origin to destination. They want postcode to postcode because they want to help. You know, it helps all sorts of MI and planning and that sort of stuff. So yeah, I will share what I can with you. Let's work reciprocally. I'll share what I've done, share what I can, and let's see what we can do. Absolutely.
My email address is in the chat for anybody who wants to make direct contact or
Thank you, Keith. Thank you very much. Oh, sorry. We got one more hand up. I've got 7 minutes left.
Yeah. Zach.
Hello, Zach.
Hello, Hayden. It's the short question is, what is the stumbling block of why it doesn't feel like more of the service providers are jumping for the opportunity? And then the allegory or analogy for me is 10, 12 years ago, smart meters, huge resistance in the electric and the power sector, and really dragging their feet. And even though we have a SMETS 1 and a SMETS 2, so two standards, and they're not exactly compatible, today the electricity companies are realizing that they're getting to understand the customer better. They're getting to understand on some smart meters how they use different appliances in the house. And, you know, obviously the analogy there is a total overview of how someone uses transport, but then beginning to see how they use elements of transport, the multimodal universe. And as a consequence, the electricity companies now can see, okay, so how do we plan for the future, and how do we plan for the use case of the customer, notwithstanding, of course, that this move into a technology space now also makes it possible when you start thinking, okay, so you have a homeowner who starts to generate their own energy, and how does that come back into the grid? But it's that they had to make that awkward, difficult step into the space so that they have begun to future-proof themselves. So why doesn't it feel like more actors are jumping in the transport space?
Oh, okay. Well, Zach, firstly, thanks very much for your commitment to the Open Transport Initiative. Thanks very much for your feedback on this. Okay, why are people slow? Okay, I don't think people are slow. I mean, we launched our standard on the 8th of January, 2020, and but thanks to everybody that contributed to that. And obviously, since then, we've had a little bit of a pandemic to deal with, and there has been a lack of funding for this sorts of non-commercial driven activity. I have to say, when we've been applying to investment funds and innovation grants, they've said, okay, but what's the ROI of your standard? What's the ROI of your work? Because we don't have an ROI, so we don't actually qualify for an awful lot of startup grants, startup considerations, and things like that. We just don't qualify. The other thing is that the rail industry, the transport industry, you know, is based on, in some cases, still Victorian age ways of thinking. And I won't say, you know, but the technology, I mean, there's some great innovators on this call, but sometimes we are hampered because it takes a long time to do things and make changes in this, especially in the rail, but something like, you can't just suddenly put a new road. You can't put a new road in. You know, look at how long it takes to put HS2 in, and those sorts of things. You can't do it, and they take monumental changes. So the industry is not used to being, in my opinion, that innovative, that fast moving, and so there's been a contributor of things. Yes, more and more world is going more and more metered. But there's also, don't forget, government have been pushing and legislating to introduce things like energy meters for things like that. There has been, as well as bottom up, the industry adopting it, there has been a top down in other industries to implement this, like open banking, open finance, and open energy, and that sort of stuff. But the industry has been pushing, the regulators have been pushing those as well. The regulators so far haven't been pushing interoperability of transport en masse yet. That is my aim, that the legislators see this and go, or they are looking at it and they're saying, we will mandate that you must be interoperable with everything else, because otherwise we're going to end up with so many silos of data, so many locked in customers all over the place. I think 2021 is the year of rail. I picked up a European Year of Rail, as Stephen knows, so you can have to look at him. But you know, I pushed that on LinkedIn yesterday and I saw it as well. But it's, you know, let's hope that when they talk about rail, they talk about transport and mobility, but let's make sure it's interoperable at the same time, or else we'll only be pushing more money, more funds to do stuff and locking more and more customers in.
Because I mean, you look at something like the microspace, and they've evolved MDS, and they're trying to do something around that.
Yep.
And then of course, prefacing all of this, or preceding all of this, you've got NAPTAN. And who would have thought NAPTAN would be the foundation to GTFS, and then so many other things.
Yes.
And you know, that was something that actually came out of the UK. So there's plenty of precedent.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, the Open Mobility Foundation, I'm talking with Yasha over there and the team over there, and they were like, oh, wow, you've done that already? That's great. And so we're looking at, with their, helping us, making sure we're more interchangeable and working together. But yeah, we're pushing for this. We think we're very proud of what we've done. A lot of hard work and blood, sweat and tears so far and contribution, but 2021 now is the year we really need adoption. So you are going to get, everybody on this is going to get plagued by me to sign up to even commit to some form of adoption, that you will look at this and add this to your backlog. Okay, I've got 2 more minutes. Is there anything else? Liam, have I got any other questions?
I don't have any other questions. Does anyone else have any other questions in the 1 minute left?
Can I just say one thing then before we finish? So going back to the European theme, I was talking to our policy people yesterday at RDG about what we're going to do to support European Year of Rail. And obviously this is politically potentially a sensitive area, but I said to them, look, we're leading the world with this kind of stuff, not just Europe, we're leading the world, but mainly because of our industry is quite fragmented. And this to me is exactly the kind of thing that we should be, contributing towards the European Year of Rail that no other member state is going to bring to the table. Let's put aside some of the more politically sensitive things, but this is great. Everybody in Europe's going to love this. So for me, I'm trying to drive this kind of enthusiasm and say, look, this is what we can push back and share with the European guys, or the EU guys, I should say, really, and try and encourage that kind of stuff. So I've dropped a link in the chat about the European Year of Rail stuff, but do get in touch with me about that, and let's talk about how we can use the Year of Rail to drive this kind of stuff forward.
That's great, Stephen. I mean, I'm only able to talk to those people that I know about and keep asking more and more people. I've spoken to SBB, the Portuguese railway, the Japanese railway, the Finland mass platforms and that sort of stuff. Everybody goes, and unfortunately in the last year, people have been going, yeah, manana, because of, unfortunately, there's other pressing things, but hopefully with the Year of Rail means a year of interoperable transport mobility alongside of that.
Indeed.
Great. What a wonderful way to finish. Thank you very much for your time. There's quite a lot that was discussed then, so I need to also watch this back to make sure I didn't lose anything along the way. But yes, if anyone else has any other questions, do get in touch. Hayden, do you want to say your email address in case they do? You're putting it in the chat. Brilliant. Okay. But yes, thank you very much for joining us, and we will see you again soon.
Many thanks, everybody. Speak to you soon.
Cheers. Thanks again.